Welcome to the Entre Pastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello and welcome to the Entre Pastors podcast on YouTube. I'm Jon Sanders, one of the co-founders and co-hosts of the show, and today we've got an awesome guest for you. He is a friend of mine by the name of Justin Janowski, and I was introduced to Justin by my co-host and fellow co-founder Les Hughes a while back, and Justin has an incredible business where he serves people by teaching them how to sell, specifically how to sell coaching. Like, he is a sales coach for Christian coaches, but he has an awesome process for sales. And in this episode, you're going to hear Justin talk about how many people have some really unhealthy narratives and some unhelpful stories that they've been telling themselves about what it means to be in sales. And listen, if you are trying to launch a business of your own and you struggle to sell because of some old, tape that's playing in the back of your head telling you how, selling is dishonest and how it lacks integrity and how it's taking advantage of people, Justin's going to address all of that. And so we're titling this episode, Selling is Serving, because it's possible to create a new narrative about what selling really is. Sure, maybe you've encountered some sketchy salespeople in the past that have, made you feel kind of icky around how they have sold. It doesn't mean that sales for you has to be like that. And Justin is going to help walk us through that. How do we get a proper mindset around sales, and how can we grow our sales for our business? So I know you're going to be blessed by this conversation we've got coming your way with our friend Justin Janowski. Check this out. Well, Justin Janowski, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the Entre Pastors podcast, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man. It's you and I have been connected for a while. You and Les have been connected for even a longer while. But I'm proud to introduce you to our audience as someone who has coached Les and is currently coaching me in the sales process. That's probably your sweet spot. But love the work that you're doing, and I'm excited to unpack and explore that a little bit with you in the time that we have together. We usually warn our guests when they come on the show, like, your life's probably going to be different now because you're going to have a hard time going out in public without being
incredible
and, pestered by the media. So get ready for all of that. But we're grateful, man.
Selfies, cameo requests. Come on, man.
Yeah, I just want to be able to eat dinner with my wife. Come on.
Yeah. Well, those days may be over now. So hey, let's start with a little introduction to you. You're not a pastor, but you have a huge heart for God's kingdom. So therefore you are our people and you're part of our tribe. So give a little overview of your life story from a ministry standpoint, a career standpoint. Tell us a little bit about the work that you have done and are doing in the world.
Yeah, I'll start by saying I was raised Christian. I went to a Lutheran church growing up, transitioned to a non-denominational church later on. And I remember when I became an adult and I left the house, having a period of time, probably 18 to 23 years old, where I didn't go to church and didn't feel very connected to God and was kind of searching, and ultimately found my way back. And God, of course, Jesus called me back. And I remember choosing my faith in my mid-20s and how different things have felt since then. And I have been in direct sales in one way or another since I was 18. I sold Cutco kitchen knives. I was really good at that, believe it or not, sitting down at people's kitchen tables and selling expensive knife sets, and then got into financial planning for a while. I did a little bit of business-to-business sales. I hired a couple of coaches and loved the coaching process, loved my own personal and professional development and the things that they unlocked in me. And so it opened my mind to the coaching world. And eventually I transitioned into doing sales for a startup coaching organization and helping the company grow from 6 clients to over $1 million and over 70 clients annually. And then I felt like the business was good and the growth and personal development, the way we were serving people was good. And it was missing the spirit of God. It wasn't Christian, and it became more and more spiritual, which I've noticed in the personal development world without being specifically Christian. And it just felt out of alignment eventually with my faith. And so I decided to start Faith to Influence to do similar work, more in the personal development space for men, entrepreneurial men initially, focusing on business stuff like growing their sales, growing their leadership, but also working on who they were as husbands and fathers and how to bring faith into all of that and kind of the whole picture. I recognized after a year and a half doing that, as I worked with a few of those entrepreneurs who were coaches, that my gift was specifically working with coaches. And I wanted to narrow in on what I was best at and empower other Christian coaches and leaders to build their audiences. God blessed my business with over 250,000 in revenue collected in our first year. And we've been able to grow since then. And it felt like it was easier for me than it is for most coaches. I think because of the experience I had with the previous coaching organization, I learned sales. Like that was easy and fun for me. I knew how to design a business model and price it. That was easy and fun for me. And I didn't have a lot of the mindset blocks that some other people and coaches, and specifically Christian coaches and leaders and entrepreneurs sometimes have. And so when I worked with those clients, it was really, really compelling. So after a couple of years running Faith to Influence, transitioned full-time into working with coaches. And now I'm really helping Christian coaches optimize their business model, pricing, and sales strategies so that they can scale their income and their impact. And I'm coming to that place from having ran thousands and thousands of high ticket coaching sales calls, probably 5,000 to 7,000 of those sales calls I've run. So I've got a lot of experience under my belt doing it. And then because of that, I've developed a bit of a reputation. We've got a second part of our business where more experienced and seasoned coaches oftentimes hire us for what I call partnership sales. So some of your audience might know Pete Vargas or Pedro Adeo or John Acuff, Ray Edwards, David Bayer. These are coaches who are doing millions of dollars in annual revenue, some of them tens of millions of dollars. They've hired us directly to do sales for them at a conference or to take the sales calls at the end of their funnel. And that's been just a pleasant little gift from God to have those opportunities. But my favorite work is working with the newer entrepreneur, the newer coach between 0 and 100K and helping them build that 6-figure business in a high integrity way that feels good. And ultimately like shifting some of the old stories that we've had about sales.
What is it about that lights you up so much, working with the startups and the people that are just getting going? What energizes you about that?
Well, one sale means so much. If for some of the entrepreneurs or the coaches listening to this who are brand new, like, that one sale means so much. The first sale will always be the most exciting sale you've ever made because it launches the business and it really matters. And I know some coaches, some entrepreneurs, they've got a side hustle in their mind for years. They're a coach or an entrepreneur for years before they actually make any sales, which blows my mind. For others, they move a little bit quicker than that. But getting that first sale is such a big benchmark. And like having a first $10,000 month is such a big benchmark. Having a first $100,000 year is such an exciting benchmark. And so I feel like turning the dial just a little bit with a new entrepreneur just creates unbelievable growth opportunity. And for the entrepreneur, the coach who's already, doing $10 million a year, I can help them maximize sales at a big event. It's fun for me. It's lucrative. We can get paid a lot for doing that, but it's not as meaningful to me as working with a new coach.
Yeah, that's cool.
New dream alive.
Before we move forward, I just need to back up real quick. I can't resist. I wanted to go back to your faith journey for just a moment and just make the point for anyone listening that Justin still has growth to do in his walk with the Lord. As for those that are not on our YouTube channel and can't see the video, right over Justin's shoulders, I'm looking at a Green Bay Packers coffee mug or candle or something like that back there. So, I mean, we'll pray for you, Justin, on that piece. But God's working,
very
God's clearly working in
strategically
your life.
placed.
Yeah.
Yes,
So you want to take a shot back, or are you just going to absorb?
Oh man. Well, I don't know if I'm in a position with some of the recent NFL news. I'm not sure how good my team's going to be. We're going to be starting a new quarterback this year, Jordan Love. I'm very excited about him. His last name is the word that Jesus cares about most, love.
Got me.
And so I think like maybe there's a little bit of a Jesus connection with the Packers right now. And I'll talk trash after one season.
Okay.
If Jordan Love proves that he's the guy we hope he is.
Well, fair enough. We'll end it right here by me saying this. I've firmly concluded that Jesus does not care and to answer my prayers for the Minnesota Vikings. Like, he is not a Vikings fan because I've asked him for a few things there and it's never been answered. So anyway.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
All right. Well, we'll get off your pack. I didn't even think about the timing of that. That was bad timing on my part with what y'all have gone through losing Aaron Rodgers here in the last few days. So my apologies. That was mean. But hey, let's move forward. I want to talk maybe down two different pathways for just a minute. One is let's talk about coaching for just a minute, and then let's talk about sales, because you need both if you're going to have an effective coaching business. You need to be a good coach, but then you also need to learn how to sell that coaching. What would you say, largely our audience is made up of pastors and people kind of from a ministry background. Maybe they've been on church staff, but Les and I have made the case that we think coaching is a good fit for many pastors. We don't prescribe it for all, but what would you say to encourage someone that's never done coaching, at least in the way that, as a business, but you're encouraging them to consider that if they've got some of those people skills and they've logged hundreds, thousands of hours of sitting across the desk, listening to people, asking questions, what would you say to them to encourage them to maybe look at coaching as a way of developing an additional stream of revenue, or maybe even a full-time stream of revenue?
Well, what I like about coaching is it's a massive, massive industry right now. I think it's $1 billion plus industry right now in the marketplace. There's a ton of opportunity. And ultimately, like at its essence, coaching is helping people become more of who God created them to become, achieve more of what they're meant to achieve, or receive more of what they want in their life. And I think it's a really empowered way to serve. And the structure behind it, most pastors, entre-pastors who are probably listening to this have been coaching and serving their entire lives. When I think about coaching, I think about asking really bold questions. I think about listening with great presence. I think about creating the space for people to share things that they don't normally share in conversation, to have a deeper conversation than we typically have with people. The difference, though, between coaching and say counseling, as an example, is ultimately at the end of a coaching call, we want to move people into action. We don't want to just help them process and reflect and consider what's led them to this point, but we also want to be future focused in coaching and say, what's next? What do you really want? And what needs to happen for you to achieve that or to receive that? And if we can help them come up with a real plan and commit to taking action on that plan, there's a great gift in that. And I know for some, who've got a pastoral background, it might feel like a fit from a skill set standpoint, but it might feel kind of awkward to say, well, I've been doing that for free for years and years and years. How am I going to charge for that? But one of the things I know to be true about coaching is when people are invested, when they've got skin in the game, when they're paying for the service, they implement it at a completely different level. In fact, the more they pay for the service, the more committed they are to getting their money's worth and taking real and massive action. And so I think it's a special opportunity to help people change their lives, change their businesses, change the direction of their relationship, or whatever it is that you decide you want to coach people on. And there's so much value in that. And there's a great business opportunity. It's a great way to provide for your family and to give back in both the service of the work and in the income that you receive.
Let me ask a similar question, but kind of on the flip side of that. Have you ever counseled or encouraged somebody not to be a coach, or like what would it take for you to kind of tell someone, hey, maybe coaching isn't something for you to consider?
It's a really good question. I think if you want to be a coach, you ought to have a certain skill set or a certain area of expertise you believe you can serve people in. And so if you're just thinking, oh, this sounds like a fun idea, but you don't have something that you think you can help people with specifically, then maybe it's just not the right time. Maybe you need to develop a skill set further to be prepared for this. Maybe you need to develop certain aspects of your character a little bit further to be prepared for this. Now, that said, we don't need to be perfect. We don't need to be exceptional at the thing that we're coaching people at. We simply need to be 1 or 2 levels ahead of our ideal audience. In fact, if you are a coach and you've gone through the same struggles, and maybe you're even just on the other side, you're still fighting some of the same battles, the same struggles that your clients are fighting, that's really wonderful. I learned a long time ago that we ought to be ordinary and extraordinary to our clients. In a lot of ways, they should say, oh my gosh, John's just like me. Les is just like me. And I want to be a little bit more like him. And if our clients are seeing us in both of those ways, wow, they're just like me. They've dealt with some of the same struggles, the same problems, and they're on the other side of it, or they're at least a couple steps ahead in the journey. I want to just get to where they're at. That's probably the point that we need to be at. But I also think, when would I not recommend that somebody become a coach? I think that to be a coach, you have to be able to make sales.
Good.
I actually think sales is more important than coaching. And so in the success of a coaching business, I believe actually sales and coaching are exactly the same thing. I think a sales call, when done right, feels like a coaching call. It's just got a different invitation at the end of it. But if you think that you're going to be a coach and people are just going to like find your website on the internet and start hiring you, it's probably not the right job unless you're prepared to do the real work. The real work to build a successful coaching business is on the front end to acquire new clients, which means we have to be able to share what we do. We have to be bold in sharing what we do. We have to be willing to invite people. We have to be willing to get in conversations and ask people to join our program. And if we don't want to do sales at all, then you're going to get into a situation with your coaching business that doesn't feel so good, because that's what it is.
Yeah, you said something really powerful and profound a minute ago, and I'm going to highlight it for the people in the back who might not have been listening. So you said that a sales call and a coaching call are very much one of the same thing. So I'm going to ask you we're going to hold that thought, and Les, help me remember to come back to that, because I want to really drill down into what does that mean? Tell me more about that. But before we go there, let's talk about this, Justin. Again, many in our audience have, I'm just going to say it this way, struggle when it comes to some money mindset issues. They have some real limiting beliefs around the subject of money. A lot of it has not been like consciously agreed upon, like I'm going to choose to believe this. It's been very subtle. They've grown up in and around the church world. And I often say that pastors have really been taught to devalue their time and their value, just the results they produce, because so much of it is expected by the people that we lead and serve. That because you're doing it for the Lord, you just do this, and you do it for a very meager salary, if any, and just live by faith, whatever that exactly means. We're being told that from people that go earn six figures in the marketplace. Oh, just live by faith, pastor, and trust God. Anyway, so we've got a lot of pastors who struggle with this, like when it comes to money, and then they run into that like objection of like, how can you charge for this? I thought you were shepherding people and caring for people, and now you're wanting to charge for your services. So I'm just going to ask you a really open-ended question, and you can go with it wherever you want, but speak to that pastor or, ministry-minded person that is really struggling with the thought of even selling to begin with. Then we'll get into more of the finer points of selling/coaching. But what would you say to someone who's like, I don't even know if it's okay for me to like thrive financially and sell thousands and thousands of dollars worth of coaching to somebody?
Well, a first thought is that I think it's okay for God to call us to different career paths and different income streams. And I think it's okay for someone to sell all their possessions and be a missionary and not have an income, and to do work for God on the ground in different places where it's needed. I think it's okay for someone to have a low salary that just barely allows ends to meet, and like doing good work in the community and showing up for your family and like just making it. That's okay. I also think it's okay, just in the same way that those are okay. It's okay for somebody to be thriving financially. It's okay to be somebody to be incredibly wealthy financially and still be doing good for the kingdom. And somehow I think, maybe from some of the stories of the Bible, we've got this idea in our back of our minds that like we ought to be poor. We ought to not have any money. And the Bible does say some interesting things about money. I think some of us have this old story that money is the root of all evil. The Bible says that the love of money is the root of all evil. Yeah. And, it's about whether or not we make an idol of money. And I think that the Bible's, pretty clear too. Jesus says it's harder for a rich man, or it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to make it into the kingdom of heaven. Aren't these interesting things? Might these create some stories for us? And I would never want to contradict anything Jesus says. And the reality is, I think a lot of people do make an idol of money, and that becomes a problem. But if we recognize that we can use money as a tool, money can be something that we're grateful for, but not the thing that's most important to us in our lives. If money can be something that we use to give generously to others, I think we can do really well with it. And the Bible also talks about tithing 10%. The Bible also talks about multiplying your talents. and God is upset if we take our coin and we bury it in the sand, and he comes back and sees that what he's given us hasn't multiplied, it hasn't grown. He wants us to multiply our talents. That's really clear in the Bible also. He wants to give us one and have us turn it into 3 or 10 or more. And so there's a lot of story there. And I know it can be a sensitive subject for people, but we have to check what our stories are about money. And we have to ask ourselves, what's actually true for me with money? And for me, my truth is the more that I earn, the more I can give. And that story removes any barriers, blocks, or resistance to me earning money. The more I earn, the more I can give. But that means that when I'm not earning very much, I better be giving. I remember my wife and I, our first year of marriage, I read a book, and it wasn't actually about money. It was about marriage, but something in that book triggered me. It was called You and Me Forever, Marriage in Light of Eternity by Francis Chan. And Francis Chan, if you've read or heard him speak, he can be pretty convicting. He can kind of punch you in the gut and really make you think. And something about that book led me to think, man, we need to give more. And we made that first year of our marriage, 2016, the year of radical giving. That was our theme for the year. And we doubled our giving from 10 to 20%. And we just got married. We moved from Colorado Springs to San Francisco. We were living in a studio apartment that cost $3,000 more a month, like twice as much a month as our 3-bedroom house in Colorado. I mean, just dramatic change in cost of living. And my wife left her high-paying job and had to be in a job search for several months. And our financial situation was a little bit dire for the first 6 months of that year. And here we are giving 20%. We were literally going into debt, giving faithfully the tithe that I felt like God was calling for us to give. And by the end of that year, God had dramatically changed our situation. And I had my first 6-figure earnings year. And we've always given 10 to 20% of what we earn. And so if you're only earning $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month, begin giving your 10% or more right now. Take that $1,000 and give 100 of it. Because then if you're already faithfully giving a percentage, the more you earn, the bigger that number becomes that you're giving to the church and to your community. And I just aim to be as generous as I possibly can. I know the more that God gives to my company, the more it grows. I provide jobs. I provide salaries. We've paid in a single year over $100,000 collectively to our team. Wow. Which is insane to me. Not counting what I get paid, team members only, over $100,000 in a year. And so the more God blesses our business, the more I can provide jobs and opportunities for them, the more I can love my neighbors well, the more I can give to my church and be impactful. And so the kingdom needs people of influence in every single social category and in every single ethnicity, gender, race. We need across all and social class, we need kingdom people in every social class, in every part of our community, doing good for the kingdom and bringing people to Jesus. And so I think that to think that earning money is bad isn't true. I think to think that not earning very much is bad isn't true. God calls each of us to a different place in this. But for me, my ministry is the marketplace. I've got a gift in sales that happens to be worth a lot. I want to earn as much as I possibly can and give as much as I possibly can. And someday I'd love to give 50% of what we earn. Someday I'd love to give 100% of what we earn. If we do well, taking care of investments and building a little bit of a legacy, I'd love to be in my 60s, 70s, running this business 30, 40 years from now. And at that point, giving 100% of new earnings away. Wouldn't that be amazing? But that only happens if we have a real business with real price, with real clients paying. And, that just opens so many doors. And it also gives us the opportunity to reach people we wouldn't be able to reach otherwise.
Yeah. Listen, there's a whole lot of pastors out there right now praying that you and your wife will move to their community so that you can come to their church and bring that spirit of generosity, that heart of generosity. But man, you are exactly right. Generosity is not a matter of how much is in your bank account. It's about what's in your chest. It's about the heart that you have for generosity. And that is, you can be a generous person no matter what your income looks like. So I just appreciate that testimony and you sharing your heart. So for that person but for that person who's got that heart, but they do want the amount to go up, that coach, that sweet spot for you, that person that's building, especially building that coaching business. I know this mindset. Don't ask me how I know. So I'm saying this for a friend, quote unquote. There are those that feel like if they could just get a Justin Janowski on their team, then you know what? They wouldn't have to get down and fool with all of that icky sales type stuff, because that's really not their deal. They just, well, if I only had the resources that Pete Vargas or a Ray Edwards or one of those that you mentioned, I could bring somebody like a stud like a Justin Janowski. Or by the way, you have an excellent team, and I know those individuals, and man, they do. They're Hall of Famers, in my opinion, when it comes to this world. You've built a great team and you've led them well. But I also know that you cannot avoid, you're the person that's the face of that company, the one creating content, the one building the relationships. We are in many ways, the best salespeople that are out there. So speak to us a little bit about the balance of that for that person that's starting out, and they just need to improve this skill set, because it is a skill set that can be improved. And then at what point, if you were to unplug from faith to influence right now, and if you were building a coaching business, what would be your mindset as far as, okay, if and when I hit, or whenever I hit this benchmark, now we can talk about me spending more time on my zone of genius and delegating some of this to someone where that's their zone of genius. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when we think about somebody hiring you to be their coach or to provide some service or value, when they're talking to you and they see that they trust you, they experience your leadership live with them in that moment. They experience you asking them the hard questions, including the one of like, hey, this costs this much. Do you want to do this? And they really receive you. It's easier for them to hire you by your sales call than it will ever be for any salesperson, no matter how great they are. It's always going to be easiest for people to want to buy, for the right people to say yes to the actual coach than it will be a salesperson. Now, at a certain level of scale, you might as well hire a salesperson so you can focus on other things. No question about it. But without a doubt, you should have a six-figure business as the salesperson for your company. It's pretty easy if you've got the right offer, the right price point, and you're pursuing people with assertiveness to get to that level as the only salesperson on your team. And then maybe at $100,000 plus, you might bring a salesperson onto your team to do sales for you. Maybe that number isn't the same for everyone, though. It's probably $100,000 as a ballpark, but it's at least past the number of financial viability. What I mean by that is, how much money does your family need you to make through your coaching business? If you don't know that number yet, you need to know that number. Not like your big goal that's exciting, that sounds fun, that sounds really like a round number, but how much do you need to earn each month to remain in business and to take care of your family at like a minimum level? And if that's 30,000 or 50 or 70 or 100 or 150 or whatever that number is for you, you should achieve that number as the primary salesperson in your organization. And then you might say, okay, now that we're surpassing that number, we've got a little bit more than we need. Let me bring on somebody else to help. And I think some of the resistance around sales and being the salesperson for your coaching business is probably coming from old stories about what sales is, similar to money. I think people have old stories that sales is pushy, or sales is icky, or sales is manipulation, or sales is sleazy, or sales is dishonest, or sales is greedy, or something like that, of that nature. And in one way or another, we believe sales is bad. And because we believe that, we don't want to get on a sales call. Like, if you believe sales is manipulation and you're not a manipulative person, you are going to do everything you can to avoid getting on a sales call. You'll self-sabotage your whole business. You'll go out of business before you do the thing that makes you feel manipulative and sleazy and icky. And so people will fail because they've got this story running around, a soundtrack in their head on repeat that they aren't aware of, or they're not willing to change. And what we might need to recognize and first bring attention to is awareness to that story. And if you've got an old story about what sales is, if you're listening, you might pause or even just write it down right now real quick. What's the old disempowering story you have about sales? Write it down on a piece of paper. Sales is sleazy. Sales is dishonest. Sales is manipulation. Whatever it is, sales is pushy. Laura Nizer, one of my clients, said. I remember when Laura said sales is pushy, I said, Laura, are you pushy? She said, oh, no, I'm not. That's why sales is hard for me. I said, oh, okay. So if we put you on a sales call with an ideal prospect, would you then be pushy? She said, no. I'm not a pushy. I can't do it. I said, okay. So then that sales call with you wouldn't be pushy, would it? She said, I guess not. I said, if sales with you isn't pushy, Laura, what is it when it's with you? I said, well, with me, I'm trying to serve my clients. So that old story, sales is pushy. If you wrote that down or whatever story you wrote down, I asked her to just draw a line straight through that, cross it off, and maybe right next to it in big capital letters. Not true, because it's not true for her. And underneath, write the true empowering story, which sales, it might begin sales with me is. It doesn't matter what the car salesman was that you met when you were a kid, what your dad said about some salesperson who came by the house, or anything else. It doesn't even matter what another salesperson says or does in the coaching industry. All that sales really is between you and your prospect is what you make it. You're the salesperson. And so sales with me, Laura said, is service. And so if you've got this old story, you just need to rewrite it. And you can decide what sales with you is. I think sales with me is love. Sales with me is about helping people become more of who they want to become or who God created them to become. Sales with me is coaching. Sales with me is coaching with an invitation at the end. Sales is, when done right, it's leadership. I believe sales is simply making it as easy as possible for the right people to say yes. I've got really empowered stories about what sales is. And like, honestly, our 10-step sales process, and I'm happy to share the PDF with your listeners who want it for free. That 10-step sales process is a perfect coaching process. You can use the exact same process on a coaching call. It's incredibly effective. The only thing that changes is step 10, where we make our offer on a sales call. Hey, I think I can help you with this. Are you ready to hear how I work with my clients? And we share that invitation. We ask if they want to join, and we choose that we're going to love and respect them, whether they buy or not. So they'll do the same for us. At the end of a coaching call, say, hey, I think I can help you with this. Would you like to develop a plan together of action? And it's the same exact thing. You're still making an offer. They still have to be like, yeah, let's do this. Okay, cool. I think maybe we should consider this. Do you want to do that? How committed are you? Ultimately, we're just helping them in the exact same way. The invitation is just slightly different. Yeah. And so if we change what we believe about sales, we remove the resistance to being on a sales call, it can become really fun. I love sales calls. I like them better than coaching calls. Yeah. Because you get to meet someone new and open new doors. It's really, really exhilarating.
Well, you said they can be one and the same. So let's drill down into that. And maybe this would be a good point to say, if you want to give us an overview of your sales process. And before you do, I want to give you this compliment and really plug you to our community. One of the things I absolutely love about Justin, the minute I think Les initially introduced me to some of your content and shared some stuff with me. And then you were a guest in a mastermind that Les and I are a part of. But what I immediately connected with you, I see, like, what you just said is not just empty words. Like, you really do have a love for people that comes through in your interaction and your selling process. And it's like, it's very relational. It's very focused on serving and loving the other people well. And I'm like, that there's integrity, man. There's all kinds of integrity into how you do it. And it's like, I want to sell like Justin sells. I want people to feel the same way interacting with a sales call with me that they do with Justin. And, when I made the commitment to jump in your sales school, I told Les I was getting on a kind of a discovery call with you. And he's like, good luck. I was like, I'm not going to buy it, Les. We can't.
I said, get out your wallet is what I said.
That's exactly what he said. And so I sheepishly called Les back and I was like, well, I just signed up for sales school. Man, we can't afford it, but we're going to figure out how to make this work. And we have recouped some of that investment, which we're grateful for. But anyway, let's get into your sales process. And I really want our audience to lean into this. This is good stuff.
Yeah. And so I'm going to share this process. I'm going to give the short version of a 10-step sales process. And then I'm going to share what it could look like in a coaching call.
Okay.
And so our first step of the process is to get into a peak emotional state before the call begins. So much of what happens on a sales call has less to do with what you're saying and even the structure of the call, and more to do with like what's going on in your own mind and your own heart, what you believe about yourself, what stories you're telling yourself. Again, emotion's contagious. When we watch a movie and people around us are laughing, we laugh. When we watch a movie and the characters in the movie, the actors in the movie are crying, we cry, or we feel the emotion of the moment in the same way. Humans are just incredibly adept at like feeling what other people feel. It's so natural. We don't even have to think about it. It just happens. And so if we come in, I call it an emotional wake. I think every one of us has an emotional wake, like a speedboat going through the water and the waves rippling out behind the boat. Our wake affects other people, just like that speedboat going by a fishing boat that's sitting still is going to rock the boat. That fishing boat's going to feel the effect, the wake of the speedboat that just went past. The same thing's true for us as humans. We have an emotional wake. If you show up to your sales call in fear and anxiety, and you're feeling nervous, and you're feeling sleazy, or you're feeling like whatever story you've got about, you're feeling all this stuff, and you're like, maybe you're even desperate because you feel like you need a sale. That's another end of this. But like, if you show up in desperation, fear, anxiety, some of that emotional wake is going to be caught by the person on the other side of the call. Even if they don't see it, even if they couldn't name your emotion, they're going to take some of it on. We do this so naturally, and they're going to feel some of that. And when people feel anxious and scared and desperate, they're not super likely to feel abundant enough to make a big decision to change their life.
It's really good. It's a lot like athletes do when they get themselves, they have headphones on, they're listening to, but that explains a lot, because I've always wondered why Jon wants to listen to Taylor Swift before our sales calls. And now that really explains a lot. So that's good.
If I knew her music, I would make a reference and a joke, but I got nothing less. But that was good. Good shot. I like it.
Well, I saw somebody post on Facebook the other day that they took their kid to a Taylor Swift concert, and it was amazing. And I think he had a shirt on that said like "Dad is a Swiftie" also. So I think if you're a Taylor Swift fan, you're a Swiftie. So Jon, you welcome to the Swiftie gang.
Thanks.
But yes, like how we feel dramatically changes the results that we get. And so if we're not feeling good, we're going to get a poor result on a sales call. We're not going to be an empowered leader. And so intentionally on the other side of this, if we're feeling confident, we're feeling peaceful, we're feeling loving, we're in a state of service emotionally, abundance, we know we have everything we need. Like when we show up that way, that wake is going to be felt and translated too. And someone can gain confidence from our confidence. You see this all the time. If you've coached anybody before, when you're confident, you believe in them, they begin to believe in themselves a little bit more. So you need to first be confident, believe in yourself, have that mustard seed of faith we're called to, so that they might experience a little bit more faith, a little bit more belief, a little bit more confidence. They might draw some of that from you. And so getting into peak state before the call begins, or a speech or whatever you're going to do that's important, requires what I call pre-call ritual, which might be breathing, it might be praying, it might be standing up. I'm standing doing this interview because I need more energy to stand. Certain calls, I want less energy, I'm going to sit down, but I stand if it's important enough that I need to bring energy to this call. And certainly like an important sales call, I'm going to do the same thing. You might have an affirmation. You might do some jumping jacks or some push-ups. You might close your eyes and meditate. You might drink some water. You might play that Taylor Swift song or a worship song you love or whatever it is to get yourself feeling good. And if you have a strategy, a 1 to 2 minute strategy, pre-call ritual to get into that state, like it becomes something you can snap back into in a moment. For me, I'm oftentimes like, God, help me to be loving, peaceful, and confident. God, help me to be loving, peaceful, and confident. God, help me to be loving, peaceful, and confident. Amen. And like that will get me into the state. And so once I'm there, I want to begin the call, and I'm going to get into rapport really quickly on the call. I'm going to spend like 30 seconds or 60 seconds small talk, and I'm not going to spend 20 or 30 minutes. That's sales avoidance. It's waste of time. It suggests that your value as a coach is extremely low if you're willing to talk about the weather and the fish on the wall and their dog for 25 minutes when they only get this might be the only call they ever have with you. My time and their time is way too valuable for that. I'm not going to be in sales avoidance. I also don't want to like have them think this call is about something different than what it is. So in 30 or 60 seconds, how are you? How's your day been so far? My day's been great. I'm really excited to talk to you. I'm going to transition to the pre-frame. This is the most important part of the conversation for me. So if you're doing sales calls right now, if you simply implement this, everything else gets easier. The pre-frame is where we tell them what's going to happen next, and we ask for their consent to sell. And we're transparent. Sales only feels bad when it's like, feels like a lie, when it feels dishonest, when it feels hidden or sneaky. And so if we're transparent up front, sales feels really good. And so my pre-frame's like, hey, Jon, thanks so much for taking the time to connect with me today. I want to make the best use of your time and mine. Could I lay a simple structure out for this call? Yes, cool. The reason we're talking is Les tells me that you're a great coach and a great leader and also a Christian leader. And I work with Christian coaches to help them optimize their business model, their pricing, and their sales strategies so that they can scale their income, scale their impact. My outcome on a call like this today is to get to know you a bit and to discover whether or not it's a fit for us to work together. And the way I'd like to get to that outcome is by asking you some questions about where you're at in your business right now, what your vision for the future is, and what some of the challenges are that you're facing right now. From there, I'll give you some perspective and coaching based on what I hear. And if it seems like a good fit, I'll explain really specifically how I work with my clients. And then you and I can decide either to work together or not work together. And either way is fine. Does that sound good? Yes. Very clear. How do we get on this call? Why does this matter? What do I do? And how are we going to find out whether or not we should work together? Like that's my outcome is to find out whether or not we should work together. I'm very clear about that. Here's how we're going to get to that outcome. And at the end, then there's mutual respect in this. There's consent. It makes everything else easier. So then
it's leadership. It's you taking leadership in that call.
Yes. Instead of them being like, okay, so what are we here for? I mean, you failed as a coach and a leader. If you are not the one transitioning from rapport into the outcome of the call, or if it feels like you don't know what to do next, it just doesn't feel like you've done this before. And so you could probably grow your confidence by setting a structure as well. Then we're just going to carry out the structure. We're going to get into discovery. I'm going to ask questions about the present and past, so I understand where they're coming from, what's going on in their life or their business or their relationship or whatever it is. And I'm going to ask with great curiosity and depth, so I really understand them. And this conversation feels different. And I'm going to create space. I'm going to listen. I'm going to ask next about their vision for the future. What do they really want their business to look like? What do they really want their life to feel like? What do they really want their relationship to be like, or their marriage to be like, whatever you're doing coaching on? I want to understand what it is that they care about. And then I want to talk about the gap. What stands in the way from where they're at to where they want to go? What's the biggest roadblock, the biggest challenge? If we can get clear on that and we help them gather with clarity what they want and what's the problem that they need to solve to get that thing that they want, we've given them a great gift, whether they hire us or not. This is coaching. And then we talk about potential futures. What's going to happen if you don't solve that problem? And then what? And then what? And how would that feel? And who else would that affect? Interesting. What would happen if you did solve that? If you solve that one problem, what would be possible for you then? I want to help people understand, like, and consider for themselves the consequence of action and inaction, because that's such a valuable reflection. So many of us are just going through the motions. We don't pause to actually reflect about what's going on in our life and why it matters. And that's a gift to give them. And after that, I might say, okay, well, how committed then are you to solving this problem? And if they're committed, that's when I can help someone. So I might insert a statement of certainty. Cool. If you're committed, I'm really confident I can help. Are you ready to hear how I work with my clients? And I'm going to get consent to sell again. Then I'm going to make my offer. I'm going to say the way I work with my clients is I do this, this, and this over this period of time. It costs this much. Is that something that you'd like to do? And if it's a yes, we're going to celebrate. That's great. And if they've got some concerns or questions, an objection doesn't need to, cause any kind of panic. One of my old mentors used to say, the amateur receives an objection, they panic. They just like freak out. Like, oh no, what do I do now? This is just the next step in the process. It's okay. It's normal. So he said, the master receives an objection, says, to be expected. Or, an objection, my old friend. We meet again. That's fine. Take a breath. It's okay. If they have a concern, I'm going to validate their concern. I'm going to ask some curious questions, try to find the root and the truth here. And I might share some perspective. And then we'll see if we want to move forward. I'm going to help them find truth. I might help them take ownership. Like, wow, you're right. It is a lot. Tell me more about that. You're right. It is a big investment. talk me through your financial position on this. Or yeah, absolutely. Like I understand. I would talk to my wife about a decision like this as well before moving forward. Let me ask you a question though. Have you made your decision for you yet? If she says, whatever you think, babe, I trust you. Do you know what you want to do? That's just helping people take ownership. There's a little bit of leadership here, a little bit of curiosity. And ultimately, like at the end, we're going to try to see if we can find a way to work together. And if it's a fit, my job is to make it easy for the right people to say yes. If it's not a fit, I'm willing to let someone go, but I want to be curious and sit with them first, because it might just be a little bit of fear that's holding them back. And they need my love, my encouragement, my belief in them. Now, as a coaching call, this process is pretty similar. You could totally begin a coaching call with a pre-frame, like, hey, I'm really excited for this call. Here's what we're going to do today. I want you to share with me. Then I'm going to ask some follow-up questions, and then we're going to dive into doing the real work together. Does that sound good? Yes. Cool. So tell me what's been going on over the last couple of weeks since we last spoke. Discovery, curious follow-up questions. Cool. It sounds like what's a theme of what's happening is this. You keep coming back to this, part of your team. What do you want from that part of your team? What do you want that part of your business to feel like? Okay, cool. Tell me more about that. Awesome. What would it be like if that happened? If you solve that problem on your team, what would be possible for your business? What's going to happen if you don't solve that problem on your team? How committed are you to solving that problem on your team? Okay, awesome. If you're committed, I've got some ideas on this, and I'm curious to hear what you want to share first. What do you think are your next steps to solve this problem? Okay, cool. Have you thought of this? Have you considered this? What about this? Okay, cool. So it sounds like we're coming up with a plan together. It sounds like if you do this and this and this, then what do you think would happen? The team problem. Okay, cool. So this is what we think is going to work. How committed are you to doing that over the next 2 weeks before we talk next? Awesome. Let's do it. Or what? Well, I'm not sure. Well, what's holding you back? Here's an objection. Oh man, it sounds like a lot of time, a lot of work. Yeah, I get it. It is a lot of time and a lot of work. You told me before, though, that if you didn't solve this problem, this was going to happen. Is this worth the time and the work? Yeah. Is there a more efficient way we can do this so it doesn't cost as much time? Who could you receive help from? Yeah. Cool. What might be a nice first step then? Okay. Awesome. Are you committed to doing that? I mean, like the coaching conversation can be exactly the same as the sales process. The invitation is just a little bit different at the end. And ultimately, a lot of it's about the art of how we're showing up, even more so than the structure.
Which is what you call your process, the art of influence. So you had mentioned, Justin, that there's a free resource for people that I wanted to just get make sure we don't miss that before we run out of time. If someone wanted to get that, where do they go to connect?
Yeah, goodsalespdf.com. You can get our 10-step process. You'll actually get our coaches playbook for Christian coaches. It's got our 10-step sales process. It's got the art of influence, which is a separate piece of content. It's got a few other really cool things in there for you, kind of a little treasure chest of coaches stuff. But specifically, what I know a lot of people are going to want is this 10-step process. That's Good Sales PDF. I believe sales, when done right, is good.
There you go. I love it. There's so much more I would love to drill down into. I mean, full disclosure, I'm in your 6-month sales school. I mean, you take 6 months to unpack this stuff. So to try to do it all in one podcast episode is asking a lot of you. But one other thing too, I wanted you to plug, if you're interested in plugging it, is your conference coming up this summer. You want to tell us about that real quick?
Thank you. Thank you for asking. Yeah, we've got a conference coming up in June. It's June 21st through 23rd. It's in Milwaukee. It's called Summer Sales Camp. And so if you want to get away to camp and rewrite some of those old stories about sales, work on a skill set that you can feel really good about. Like sales, when you do it right, it feels good for you and the prospect. We would love to have you come out to sales camp. And you can find more information about that at F2I Tribe. That's F, the number 2, I, F2itribe.com/sales camp. And if you get on our email list, we'll email you about sales camp. I promise you. So if you grab the 10-step PDF, you'll get some emails about sales camp, but I'd love to have you there and connect with you if you're an entrepreneur who wants to grow in your sales skill set and like actually have a profitable business that's impacting more and more people.
Is there going to be a water slide at sales camp?
I don't know if there's gonna be a water slide, but there could be cheese curds at sales camp. There is going to be a barbecue at my house. So besides like learning great sales strategies with other Christian leaders and entrepreneurs, you get a barbecue at my backyard. You can meet my kids and my wife. And we don't have a big mansion, a big, beautiful house, but it's very sweet and warm and loving. And we'd love to hang out with you.
Awesome. Nobody's going to short sheet your bed, John. Just go. Or don't worry about it.
I'm going, man. I'm seriously planning on it. So Justin, this has been so good, man. I knew this time would fly by way too fast, but I've enjoyed getting to hang out with you here on our platform for a little while, and grateful for the value you've delivered to our people. So thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, Justin.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the Entre Pastors Podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the Entre Pastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our Entre Pastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own Entre Pastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at entrepastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.